round of Bad Ideas, the show where we look at misfires, mistakes, and miscalculations from all throughout Christmas time.
I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Albert Berg, and we are brought to you today by our featured patron, Jay. By the way, we are recording this episode at the last minute, Tony, in the final hours of the week leading up to Christmas, because we realized we needed to cover something very special for you guys today. The Gavle Goat.
Yes, and this was suggested by one of our listeners, Miss Kim Stengel.
Yes, which, by the way, if you guys have suggestions for bad ideas, you should email them to badideashow@gmail.com. We really love getting those. But the Gavle Goat was a tale that I was surprised I hadn't heard of before. And we're going to go all the way back to 1966 to start with for this story. We're actually going to go way further back to, like, the dawn of history.
Some pagan stuff.
But let's start with 1966. In 1966, a man named Stig Gavlin hatched a plan to draw people downtown in the Swedish town of Gävle during the darkest, coldest time of the year. He proposed the building of an enormous goat made of straw in the town square that would bring tourists and townsfolk alike to admire the strange straw sculpture and hopefully to spend some money in the local shops.
I mean, it's not the worst idea in the world I've heard to be like, let's just build something, especially because the straw structure is not going to be that expensive. It's not like he's asking you to do like a 20-foot tall ice sculpture, which probably wouldn't be that expensive either. But like, it's not a bad idea.
I want to point out that the expense to build this is actually more than you might think. The current Gavle Goat that stands today took 1,000 man-hours to complete.
Oh, wow.
Which is one of the reasons why it's going to be a problem when people start burning this thing to the ground.
Almost yearly.
Almost yearly. That's jumping a little bit ahead in the story, though. The building of the huge straw goat was mostly funded by the Southern Merchants Association. These are essentially a local chamber of commerce kind of thing. A bunch of businesses around this area get together and they're like, hey, this will be a cool tourist attraction. It'll hopefully improve our business. Let's do it. And they build the first Gavle Goat on December 1st. It stood for an entire month until New Year's Eve, when someone set it on fire, burning it to the ground.
I mean, that's an appropriate thing to do. Like, that's what I do with people who leave their Christmas ornaments up, like, past that day.
Well, to be fair, we're going to be talking a lot about ancient Christmas traditions, and the 12 days of Christmas actually start on Christmas and move forward. And if you're getting really technical and old school with it, the Christmas that we celebrate today wasn't correct according to the old calendar. There's a Gregorian calendar that changed things around, so Christmas time, quote unquote, extends into January by some people's calculations.
Is that more like Yule calculations, or is this like actual like okay?
Again, we're going to be going way back, and the reason we're going to be going way back is to explain why you would build a giant goat out of straw. Like, what does this have to do with anything? Why a goat? Why straw? What is the point of this thing? And the answer to both of these questions lies in Scandinavian folklore that stretches back farther than history can record. Long before Santa Claus or even Christmas existed, the people of Sweden marked the passage of the winter solstice with the help of the Yule Goat. The Yule Goat was an object crafted out of the final sheaf of corn or wheat harvested in a year, and it was believed to contain the spirit of the harvest itself. Now, it's notable, I was not able to find what the object you would fashion out of straw or wheat would be. It wasn't necessarily in the shape of a goat. It just was called the Yule Goat.
I bet they tried to fashion it into something like that looked remotely goatish.
I would assume that too, and obviously the tradition has turned into that today. I just want everybody to be super clear that that is not something I was able to confirm. What I do know is that a number of traditions grew up around the Yule Goat. One of them involved sneaking into your neighbor's house and leaving the Yule Goat to surprise them in the morning, and then they would have to like take the Yule Goat that had been left and sneak it into somebody else's house. It was kind of a weird pass it around kind of thing. There would also be a practice that was similar to trick-or-treating or wassailing, if you're familiar with that practice, where trick-or-treating, everybody knows, kids go around and they say trick-or-treat and they get candy. Wassailing is similar to caroling, but more abusive because you just go to people's house.
I was going to say, it sounds very abusive. Like, wassailing is what I would consider like actual carolers coming to my house. It's like, are they going to walk in and like throw sticks? Or are they going to like, what are they going to do? Like,
well,
what's
they don't
this
throw
harassment?
things, but they're going to come in and just overstay their welcome with singing until you give them the wassail and like some leftover food from your Christmas dinner. And this was a similar practice in Sweden, only in Sweden, it was carried out by people in goat masks. You would go to different houses, you would have a goat mask on, you would actually disguise your movements, and the person at the house would have to guess who you were. And some of the traditions had, once you had guessed who some of these people were, then you would then don your own goat mask and go to the next house and sort of leapfrog through the town with this weird tradition of running around, banging on people's doors, and being the Yule Goat. And this Yule Goat tradition may have been inspired by the two goats that pulled Thor's chariots through the skies. So we're talking about very ancient spiritual traditions. And even after the advent of Christianity, the Yule Goat, or Julebocken, was traditionally seen as the entity that delivered presents on Christmas Day. And even when Santa Claus finally took root in Sweden, he was still often helped by the Yule Goat, echoing the ancient tradition of the bearded god Thor and his goat companions.
And you'll notice that a lot of these names are being skipped over because these goats are named Tangrisnir and Tangrisjastner.
I didn't skip over them, I just never wrote them down. There's a lot of weeds we can get into here, Tony.
Yeah. If you want to see a bunch of these old mythical creatures, I still always am going to recommend the book Krampus by Brahm, because he goes deep into this sort of lore.
This is the kind of thing, I don't remember any of this specific stuff being brought up in Krampus, but it's very evocative of the kind of stuff that was in that book. Both of us thoroughly enjoyed. But you have what is in essence an ancient spirit totem being put to work in the service of modern materialism, and if you're the kind of person who thinks that might not go well, you would actually be correct. The Yule Goat put up by the Southern merchants was burned 3 times in the first 5 years that they put out this tradition. And in 1971, they threw up their hands and they said, okay, fine. It cost a lot of money. People keep burning it down. We ain't going to keep doing this. We give up. But a group of students from the Natural Science Club of the School of Vasa, which we just had an episode about Vasa. Yes. Sweden coming back around for the second episode in a row. These guys took up the challenge of keeping the Gavle Goat tradition alive, and they built their own version of the goat that was somewhat smaller than the one the Southern merchants had put up, but it too was destroyed, not by fire that first year, but by being smashed to bits. Undeterred, they tried again the next year when their goat collapsed, and the next year when it was stolen, trying over and over again for the next 14 years to build a Gavle Goat that could survive the season without disaster.
Has a single one survived yet?
One of these attempts survived in 1981. Of the rest, 13 out of 14 of their Gavle Goats was destroyed or damaged severely. In 1985, the Natural Science Club attempted their biggest goat yet. It was 41 feet tall, surrounded by fencing, and guarded by security guards and soldiers from the local area. It was so large, it was featured in the Guinness Book of World Records. Fortunately, the people from Guinness recorded the record before this goat, too, burned to the ground. Now, the Southern merchants decided to get back in the game. And they had reason to be kind of annoyed with the Natural Science Club because the Southern merchants had built their original goat taller than 41 feet, but they never got no Guinness Book of World Records. Nobody came and certified that one. And they said, listen, it is on now. We are going to start building Gavle Goats again. And from this time on, the Gavle Goat is actually 2 Gavle Goats. They said, if this is our idea originally, if somebody's going to have the biggest one and get people coming to have a record noted, it's going to be us.
It's not going to be some college kids. Yeah.
Yes.
We're not going to let them have our glory. We're the merchants.
So over the next few years, the 2 groups kept trying to outdo the other's goats. Occasionally, one of the goats would survive, but more often they were burned. I want to read that sentence again. Occasionally, one of the goats would survive, but more often they were burned. In 1992,
I have
both
a feeling
goats
you could trace back that it was one of the merchants that did it, or one of the college students that did it, or both. So it's like all of a sudden there's a rivalry between the 2, and it all ends in flames. That's all this is going towards.
I suspected that could be the case, but many times the people who light the goat on fire are not caught. Sometimes it's just some random drunk guy who's like, there's a big straw thing. What if I put my lighter up to it? See what's going to happen. So that happens a lot, but a lot of times people just get away with doing this. They just run off and they're never seen again. I don't know if it's the rivals torching each other. I do know that in 1992, both goats were burned on the same night. And when the Southern merchants rebuilt theirs, it was burned down again. The Southern merchants tried and failed several times to take back the world record, but each year their construction fell just shy of the record set by the Natural Science Club. The competition became so fierce between the 2 goats that the Natural Science Club once included a sign with their goat wishing everyone a Merry Christmas except the Southern merchants.
That's so petty.
It's so petty. That was also a year where the Southern merchants are like, we're going so big. We are going to get it this year. We're going to get the record. And the Natural Science Club is like, we're going to build like the smallest one now. Ours is going to be small. Look how silly you look with your giant goat.
In like some sort of like microprocessing unit, so it was like full-on microscopic goat.
No, it was just like the size of a horse. You know, like it just wasn't nearly as majestic and giant.
That sounds like a bad funding year more than anything else.
It could be. They said it was in protest too. Like, the Southern merchants are getting too big for their britches. We don't need this bigness.
You're forgetting the spirit of Christmas with this pagan symbol.
In 1993, the Southern merchants announced they were going to attempt the record again, only to find that their goat, once completed, only stood 34 feet tall. The same year, the Natural Science Club had a 49-foot tall goat.
Outdoing their record by another factor.
Yes, and it's funny because the merchants are like, listen, you might have the tallest one, but look at that neck. This goat is mainly neck. It's mainly a Christmas giraffe now that you've built.
Yeah, it's a Christmas llama. It's not a goat.
Year after year, the goats were rebuilt. Plans were made. Precautions were taken. Some years, the goats were sprayed with fire-retardant chemicals. In other years, they were soaked with water. Occasionally, they survived. But even the best laid plans of the goat builders seemed largely ineffective against the endless arson attacks. Sometimes the burning was a drunken prank. Once an American lit the goat on fire and afterward claimed that he thought he was participating in an acceptable tradition, but some goat burners were more dedicated and purposeful. In 2005, men dressed as Santa Claus and the Gingerbread Man fired a flaming arrow at the goat, setting it ablaze.
Why is this not a movie?
In the short documentary, Killing Gavle, one of the culprits appeared anonymously, claiming his motivation was to bring back reverence to the ancient Swedish gods.
Oh, so he's like an Odinist or something.
Yes, and I highly recommend that. It's about a 20-minute short documentary talking about the history of this. I watched it as I was studying for this, and it was delightful and very much fun.
You guys can see exactly why we picked this one. That's our bonus episode, because this whole thing is hilarious to me. I love this whole Gavle Goat deal.
There's more though. So I mentioned these guys in 2005. They're like, we will bring back the tradition of Odin and smush the puny Jesus man. Okay, so that happens in 2005 with the flaming arrow. In 2009, they get more sophisticated because for quite a while now, I think as far back as 1996, there's been a webcam watching the Gavle Goat. And in 2009, before the goat was set ablaze, the webcams monitoring the goat were killed with a DDoS attack. A denial of service attack happens just before the goat itself was set on fire.
So that's definitely a coordinated effort, at least a little bit.
With some of these people, yes. Again, the guy in 2001 who was an American, he's just like, I thought it was okay. Everybody else gets to burn down the goat. Why can't I burn it down?
I'm going to go to Sweden, and I'm going to get a bottle of something like over 100 proof, and I'm just going to launch it at one of these goats. And I'll take my 10 days as part of my vacation, because Swedish prisons are very nice, and they are filled with IKEA furniture. It'll be fine.
You can actually buy your own Yule goat from IKEA, by the way.
I'm not that far from an IKEA, and I think I need to get one.
I don't know if you can. They sell them in Sweden. I think it might not be the biggest seller in America. In 2010, someone attempted to steal the goat with the helicopter, bribing the guards to look the other way, but the guards were like, nah, man, I'm not taking your bribe. They were going to try to steal it and fly it to Stockholm. In 2015, a man with a lighter who smelled of gasoline was arrested after the goat went up in flames, and he eventually admitted to setting the blaze, adding that he now understood it was, quote, an extremely bad idea.
At least we got a quote for that.
Yes, if you're wondering where the bad idea is, it's setting this goat on fire every year. People be working hard to make this goat. At the time of this recording, the 2019 Gävle Goat still stands. And I am watching the live feed from the webcam right now as we're recording, just to be sure that that is an accurate statement. It has survived the season for the previous 2 years. If it survives this season, it will be the first time in its history it has escaped disaster for 3 years in a row.
Yeah, they have not been able to attain the three-peat. But didn't you say the edges of that thing have fire on it?
The webcam
The
thing.
webcam?
It's just an effect. It's not actually burning
but that's
around
like-
the Gävle Goat.
I feel like that's how arsonists just like stare at the world. Like they're just like looking longingly at it, and there's just fire at the edges of their eyes. It's like, don't encourage it like that.
Well, you know that's what everybody's excited to see, though. On the one hand, it's like, well, everybody worked really hard on this thing. And on the other hand, it keeps burning down so often that you're like, oh, I gotta know, is it gonna win this time? The fact that it could burn down is part of the draw. If they built it out of stainless steel, it would just be some hunk of, permanent nonsense that gets hauled out every Christmas. And you're like, okay, yeah, there it is. But the impermanence of it is part of what makes it super special, I think.
That is true.
There's also the sort of weird collision of cultures, right? You have Christianity and paganism that have already been mashed together with this thing. In the Killing Gävle documentary, one of the ladies refers to it as the Christian symbol of the goat. And I'm like, I don't think that's accurate. I mean, maybe there was goats in the manger with Jesus, but I'm pretty sure it's the pagan thing. And it's also mashed up in the whole consumerist Christmas thing. Come down and spend money at our shops. You could understand where, like, the modern mind is sort of boggled by what exactly is important here to understand about this. Yeah. Even though it's something that still exists today, it has these roots that extend back so far into history. And I think people can sense that kind of thing somewhere in their being, and they're drawn to it. At least I am. I know researching this, the lore part of it was the most interesting thing to me, of just, where did this goat come from? What is going on in Swedish history that a Gävle Goat could even exist? Why is this so resonant with these people? And it still resonates. But that is it. I think that is going to do it for our episode about the Gävle Goat. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something a little new. if you have more information or want to fill in some gaps, please feel free to leave those in the comments. We always love to get those. As we mentioned, we always love to get suggestions for other bad ideas, which you can leave, as we mentioned, at badideashow@gmail.com. And Merry Christmas if you're listening to this on Christmas. If you're not, hey, keep it all the year. That's what Scrooge said.
I'm sure there's a fun, happy holiday somewhere around there for you.
We'll see you guys next time. Have a good week.
Bye, everybody.